to the beautiful village of Edgerton, here in the heart of Bolton. I'm Marion Dutton and this is MazArt Studio. Oh, it's an absolutely freezing January morning, so I've got an absolutely fabulous painting to share with you today called Silent Night. It's been a really popular one with my students, particularly just before Christmas. I think you're really going to enjoy this one. So come and join me at the palette and I'll run through the colours and the equipment we'll be using for today. So today we'll be using some titanium white, some alizarin crimson, cerulean blue, some Prussian blue and some ivory black. We will also be using some liquid white. Now I do get a lot of questions about liquid white. Basically all liquid white is some linseed oil mixed with titanium white. So if you can't actually buy that, you can mix your own. The brushes we'll be using, I've got a 1-inch bristle brush, a number 3 fan, a couple of flat brushes, importantly a liner brush, and then a very soft blending brush which might be using, might not be using. So that's pretty much it, and the only other thing is plenty of kitchen towels because you'll certainly be using those. So I'm using a 16 by 20 stretched canvas, and I'm going to begin by applying a nice even coat of the liquid white. Now I just kind of blob this on. You don't need a lot of this, you are looking for a thin coat. You have two ways to apply this. You can either apply it using the X strokes or you can scrub this into the weave of the canvas. Just going to add a little bit more than that. Now there is a little test you can do which I'll show you right at the end, so you can see if you've got enough of the liquid white on. So I'm pushing this into the weave of the canvas. And what this does is it lubricates the canvas, makes the canvas nice and slick so that we're able to do a lot of the blending directly. I'm pushing this in, scrubbing this right into the weave. And get that on. So you're looking for a nice even coat, not too thick, not too thin. Now if you actually sort of angle yourself, you should be able to see where you've got little dry patches so that you can make sure that you've got the right amount. Now this canvas is very greedy and it seems to be soaking quite a lot of this up today. You'll find that, depending on the quality of your canvas, this one isn't a particularly great quality. Ideal for when you're starting out. You know, use the cheap ones and just to practice on. Absolutely not a problem. Right, we're getting there, I think. Starting to look about right. So you're looking for that nice even coat, and then you need to do your little fingerprint test. And that is simply just to touch it in a few areas, and you're looking for a nice even fingerprint. If you have too much on and you've got a blob like that, you've way too much on. And if you've got nothing at all on your hand, then you haven't got enough. So that's about right. Now, I'm going to switch to my flat brush, and I did forget to mention we need a little bit of linseed oil. So I've got some there in a little carton, and I'm going to dip my brush into that, and I'm going to use, it doesn't really matter because it's just for sketching, a little bit of the alizarin crimson. Now all I'm going to do is sketch my horizon line, and this is just so that I know which part is going to be sky and which part is going to be the snow area. So nothing fancy, nothing complicated. Now I want my horizon to be just a little bit above the halfway mark. And that's simply just good composition skills really. You don't want to split your canvas directly down the middle. So I've got a little bit of a dip there just for some interest. Okay, so I'm going to begin by starting on the sky area. Start with some titanium white. Now I've switched to, I think it's a number 8, yeah, flat brush. And I'm adding some cerulean blue to that. So I'm looking for a nice pale blue. Now I don't over mix my paint, I just, you know, you can see how marbly that is. Again, you'll do a lot of your mixing directly on the canvas. So I'm using an X stroke now, and I want to begin to create these little rings around the moon. Create some nice interest. So using X strokes, I'm going to begin to start a little circle. Now I'm going to start increasing the value. That's going to be a part of my lighter value. So I'm going to start increasing the value by adding just a little bit more blue. Coming out of that pile and just darkening that up just a little bit. Now I'm going to come out of this ring. Using the X strokes again. And then as this blue paint mixes with the liquid white that is underneath, I'm going to start coming towards the blue in the centre. And you'll create these lovely little bands of rings, little dark and light values. It gives you a really, really interesting sky. So again, now I'm not worried, it's looking very, very rough at this stage, and that's not a problem. We'll do a lot of the blending at the end once we've got all the colours in place. So I'm just going to wipe the excess paint onto a paper towel. And now instead of going into the puddle, I'm going to just use the cerulean blue on its own. Again, I'm coming out. Same X strokes. And again, as it starts to blend with the liquid white, I'm going to start going towards the other colour. Hopefully you can see now there's these little bands of transition colour happening. This is incredibly therapeutic. Nothing like sitting in a nice warm studio painting a winter scene. So now I'm going to add some cerulean blue, and I'm going to start darkening the cerulean blue with some of the Prussian blue. So all the time I'm increasing the value and, you know, going darker and darker. So again, the same thing, I still want to create these little bands. So I'm going out from the ring. I'm going to move that out of the way. Redarken that. Start on this side. Now I'm taking this all the way to the horizon, and as this blue begins to mix with the liquid white and go lighter, I'm going to go towards the other colour. So you've got these lovely, lovely bands of colour coming through. Again, like I said, it's going to look very, very rough until we start the blending. So I'm wiping the brush, and again, once again, I'm going to increase the value. So this time I'm leaving out the cerulean altogether and going straight with the Prussian. Again, same thing. You see how much darker that value is. I'll wipe the excess paint, go straight back into the Prussian and do the other side. This is an absolutely gorgeous painting. One of my clients actually had it turned into a Christmas card, and she was giving that out to people for Christmas, which I thought was a really, really cool idea. So it's certainly something you can do. Okay, you can see these lovely bands of colour coming through now. So once again, I'm going to increase the value. I'm going to add a little touch of the alizarin to that, and that will just give it a slightly purplish colour. And again, I'm coming out. I'll add a little bit more alizarin, that's not quite showing up. This is just to add a little different flavour in here, which I think is always nice. Just give that a little wipe and reload. Now I want these edges to be lovely and dark. And then this final corner now, I'm going to go straight into this puddle. That's blue, alizarin and ivory black. So this should be nice and dark. Now you don't want to use black on its own, it's a very, very dead colour. So by throwing in that red and that blue, you've got a bit of life in that black colour. See how beautiful that is. It mixes with the liquid white underneath, you get these absolutely gorgeous tones coming through. But my priorities, I wanted that lovely dark in that top corner. And I'm going to just throw a little bit of that up in this top corner as well. Okay, that's all my values on. So simply now we have to nice clean brush and we're going to begin doing the blending. Okay, I've cleaned my brush. What we need to do now is with a nice clean brush we're going to start blending. Now the trick with the blending is to actually not take the brush off the canvas. Now I get a lot of students that do this, and as you can see, as you're picking up the dark, you're going to contaminate your light areas and you'll get yourself into all sorts of problems. So keep your brush on the canvas and keep your movements just a little bit smaller. So I'm just sort of focusing now on breaking the line so that there's a lovely soft transition between one colour and the next. Your aim really is to try and see, you know, that you can't actually see where one colour starts and the next begins. Now this is just my first blend. I may do this 2 or 3 times until I'm absolutely happy with it. Now I'm blending in the direction. I want this to have these rings around, so that's how I'm blending. So I'm just working this in now. As you can see, we're really starting to get some soft transitions. This is the time that, this is the part that really, really takes the time. You know, it's worth spending that time getting the blending just so. So we're getting these lovely, lovely rings coming through, darks and lights. I just think it's fantastic. So it's just working that paint. This is the absolute beauty of oil painting. Now you can use this technique with acrylics, but there is a little bit of difference in it, is that you do have to blend as you go really with acrylics, rather than sort of leave it all till the end. Now the rule is with this, as you go further out and you go into the darks, you cannot come back into this light area unless you clean your brush. So if you do want to blend, you know, a couple of times, then you must clean your brush before you come back into this light. So all I'm doing really is breaking up the hard lines so it's a nice soft transition. Just keep working it. Back over here now, and do the same on this side. All the time sort of keeping these rings and allowing my blending to go in the direction. Now doesn't that look cool? Almost look like we're in a trance there. So that's my first blend. Now really importantly, I clean my brush. Now as it happens, I'm pretty happy with that, so I'm going to switch to a soft blending brush. I would always advise you do your bulk of your blending with a flat brush or your 1-inch brush, and then only use this as your final, and that's just to get rid of any final brush strokes. So I'm very light. You use this right on the actual tip rather than the sides, and it's such a light pressure, it's like a woman dusting powder off her nose. Very little pressure. Now I'm pretty happy with that. So we're going to put our moon on. We're going to do a little bit of finger painting for that. So into some titanium white. Now I like to get my motor going on the palette first, and the reason is if you go straight in to your canvas like that, you could end up with a little bit of a white peak, a little bit like icing. So I sort of get my motor going on the palette first, and then we'll take that up to the sky, and then we'll repeat the same movement. And voila, how cool is that? Now I am going to just switch to a very small blender brush. It's exactly the same as the one I was using, just a little bit smaller, and I'm very lightly, again no pressure at all, I'm just going to blend this moon, and that sort of sit down nicely into the sky area. So I've switched now to a number 3 fan brush. Now this is a bristle fan brush, and you need that really. The bristles are your workhorses. We're going to be sort of stippling on the background trees here now, so I want quite a stiff firm brush. Now I tend to use the puddles of paint that I've already got. Now I'm looking at something just a little bit darker than the value of the sky area. So I'm going in, which is the cerulean blue and some of the Prussian blue. So I'm working this through into the brush, and then I want to bash this brush open, which is why you want a nice bristle, nice firm bristle. You don't want to be using a soft synthetic for this, or else it'll be ruined by the end of the painting. So I'm stippling on some distant bushes, and this is just tapping. So my main interest is this outer edge is nice and open and airy. And you want to keep your shapes just that little bit more random. It's human nature, we want to repeat our shapes, but it looks just, you know, it's so much more natural if you can try and keep your shapes just a little irregular. Now as you get to the base, these can be nicely filled in and blocked in. The main area is this, the outer edge, you know, needs to be nice and open. So I'm going to reload. Again, pushing them bristles nice and wide. I'm going to add a little bit more paint. A little bit of cerulean blue and a little bit of the Prussian blue. Push those bristles open. and just stipple on these trees in the background. Now I'm just going to increase the value, or darken the value up just a little bit, and that will create another layer in front of the one that's behind. Again, just adding a little bit of depth. Now I'm going to take this just past the halfway mark. And nice and full. The trees are a lot denser the further down that they are. So that's the effect I want to create. And then here I'm going to create some fir trees in the distance. And to do that, I'm just going to create a little guideline for me. And then turn the brush onto a side and again begin to stipple. And reloading. Again, a little bit of cerulean, a little bit of the Prussian. There's plenty of paint on my brush. And I've changed the style of the trees just for a little bit of interest. You can just stipple all the way across if you wanted to. A lot of this won't show when the major trees go on there. But I think it's kind of nice just to have a little bit of a variety. Again, I'm conscious that I don't want to create them all the same, so I'll have some smaller ones. Now it's a little bit darker here, so I'm going to just increase the value just a little bit more. Maybe add some of this black that we mixed for the sky earlier. I do want it to stand out a little bit against the sky. See, that's not showing up at all now, so I'm going to switch to the black, the blue and the alizarin that we mixed for the sky, so it's nice and dark, and that stands out much better. And you'll have to judge this against how light or dark your sky is. Again, I'm not trying to create too much attention here in the background because, it's not the main focal point. This is just something just to, complement the supporting actors to our main tree. So I'm going to wipe my brush now. In fact, I'm actually going to clean this excess dark colour off because I want to stipple on some snow onto these trees. Give that a wipe, take all that excess thinner out of there. Now, as a general rule, I clean my brushes as little as possible during a painting session. Usually if you're going from a dark colour to a lighter colour is probably the only time. So I'm going to mix some titanium white. In fact, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use the mix that I had from earlier, again staying with the puddle painting. So this is just basically white and cerulean blue. Now I want this to stick to the thicker underpainting that we've got for the trees there. So I'm going to start adding a few drops of oil. Make this a nice creamier mix. Basically the rules in wet on wet oil painting is thin paint will stick to thick. So I'm making this thin enough that it just sticks nicely to the thicker paint underneath. So again, I'm going to bash my brush nice and wide. That's your tree inside there. So you want to push those bristles open. And now I'm going to stipple on some of this snow. Okay. Just bash them bristles open a bit more. So it's a very light touch. And we've done this in blue rather than white because we want this to be distant snow. I'm just tapping that on now, nice and lightly. Thinking really that my light source is coming from the right on this side. So I'm going to light the right side of these trees up. You will need to reload regularly, and you will need to keep reshaping those bristles, re-pushing them open. Okay, we'll do the other side. So again, from this point of view, the light will be hitting this side from the left. I'm just tapping that on nice and lightly. Again, I'm going to wipe the brush, push the bristles open. Remember to leave some of that dark showing. You don't want to cover that dark up. Your dark is your friend. Push them bristles right open. Now some of this will get covered, but because you don't know until you put your main tree on, you just got to paint it all. Push them bristles. It's a very, very light touch. If you press too hard, you're just going to have really, it's just going to go blobby really on you, and it'll mix with the colour underneath, and you're going to end up with mud. So it's a very, very light touch. Now if you find that when you touch it very lightly nothing is happening, it usually means that you just need to add a little bit more oil to thin the paint a little bit more. So I've switched now back to my 1-inch brush. Now I haven't bothered to clean it. Like I said, I clean them as little as possible. I'm mixing some titanium white and a little bit of the cerulean blue. So I'm going to begin deciding on my pathway. Now I want the pathway to be pretty much underneath where the moon is. Nothing complicated about this. Just remember that it's as it comes towards you, the path is going to go a little bit light, a little bit wider. Again, just following the rules of perspective. I'm going to have it turning a little bit. So that's going to be my path. Now the key is to keep your strokes pretty horizontal, otherwise your path is going to look like it's tipping over a little bit. So at the top here, I'm just going to allow that to just disappear and just blend those bottoms out so they're nice and soft. So now I'm going to add some Prussian blue to this mix, make it a little bit dark, a little bit more of the cerulean. And I'm going to begin creating the lay of the land. Now that simply is just following, it's too much paint, so I'm just wiping off the excess there. I only want a very light covering. I'm just following the lay of the land. Now by pushing up against these here, it's going to look as though the snow is in front. Now again, a lot of this will be covered. So I'm just creating a little bit of a hillside, and then levelling off towards the pathway. Now I don't want this perfect. It's quite good that there's little streaks and variation in that. When we come to blend that later, it's just going to look like the shadows within the snow area. So again, back up to here, and pushing up against the trees to create the illusion of a little bit of a hill in front of these trees, and bringing that down on top of the path. Leave a bit of a space for some white. Hopefully now you can start to see the land just forming against this flatter path area. When you're doing these hills, it's important to level your stroke off. You come down and do that, it's going to look really strange. So you do need to bring your hill down and then level it back off again. Think of your bottom of your canvas as your horizon line. Keeping it nice and level. So I've got that all in place, pretty much how I want that. There's shadows within the snow. So I'm going to blend that, but I'm going to clean my brush first. Give that a good beating. Now if you're a little bit confused about how to clean your brushes, refer to the video that we've got on setting up and cleaning the brushes. There is a whole video dedicated to that, so that should help you with that. So now with a nice clean brush, nice firm strokes, I'm just going to blend the whole area. So I'm looking just to keep it all nice and soft. No hard brush strokes. Now at the moment you can just about make out where your path is. When we come to do the highlighting later, we'll really be able to pull that out. But this is enough for now to put our trees and everything on. Okay, so I'm now going to begin doing these fir trees that are in the foreground. Now for that we want a nice dark value. So that's the Prussian blue, some of that alizarin crimson, and some of the ivory black. So I'm working that, I'm back to the fan brush. Now to start off with, I'm just going to make some little markers. I'm going to have one here, I think. We'll have the main tree about here and another one here. Now you don't want to make these the same size. So I'm going to have this one a little bit smaller, but I do want it taller than the ones in the background. And that'll push those, it'll have the effect of pushing those a little bit further back. So again, I'll put my little guideline in, turn my brush to the side and begin stippling. Bring that down. Now you can see that's very spacious in the middle, and I want this a little bit fuller in the centre, so I'm going to go back and just fill in that centre. It's a little bit denser. Now they don't look much until you start the highlighting. But again, my main interest is that I want the outside edges to be nice and open. So I'm going to create these first and then I'll highlight them. I'll do these two first and highlight those. So this one I want to be a little bit taller than that one. So something about here. Again, it's just to keep things nice and random. You don't want everything identical. So come down from the top and then just lightly begin tapping. And it's okay if you're going over some of your background trees. That's what you want. You want to be overlapping. Now I don't know if you saw that, if you notice I turned the brush to get the paint from the other side. Fill that in. Okay, I'm going to wipe my brush now and I'm going to begin highlighting those before I focus on this main tree. So I'm going back to the mix that we used for the snow in the background, which is the cerulean blue and white. And remember, as this is a highlight colour, we're going to thin this with some oil. So again, I'm going to push them bristles open, really bash your brush. And I'm going to begin highlighting. Now, the reason I haven't gone for pure white is I want these to still be a little bit in the distance. Save the bright white for our main tree. I'm not making too much detail and too much attention to these ones in the background. Again, I'm just reloading, pushing those bristles open. And just tapping on, leaving those darks underneath. Now I'm just going to wipe the brush. And where they sat on the snow, we're just going to pull a little bit of a shadow. Now it's easier to do this before you start on your main tree. I'm thinking the light's hitting that it would cause a shadow this way. And I'm going to do, and that's the effect of sitting these trees down so they don't look like they're floating. And I'll do this exactly the same on this side. So we're now going on to the main tree, which is more blue, more alizarin and more black. Plenty of paint on this bristle brush now. So I'm loading up on both sides, so you've got plenty of paint on there. Okay, so I want this just to be a little bit taller than the one. Put my little guideline in, bring it all the way down. Now you will be picking up a lot of the colour that's underneath, so you will need to wipe regularly and reload regularly. You want this value to be lovely and dark. This is our main focal point of the painting, so we want the main attention to come to this. So I'm dropping down a little bit from the top, and I'm going to begin the stippling, turning the brush slightly on the angle and just stipple. Now as I get further down, I will be picking up the paint from underneath, so I'm just going to turn the brush over and begin using the other side. Now we may have to reload quite a few times to get this tree done. So I want this much wider. You can see now how it's starting to go grey. So I'm going to wipe the brush and I'm going to reload. Again, lots and lots of paint. A bit more of that blue. And I'm going to go back to the halfway. Again, fill in that centre area in. You want it nice and dense. Again, turn the brush over. So now at this point, I'm going to decide where I want to sort of fill the tree in a little bit. So a little bit more paint, little blue, little black, little red, or alizarin should we say. And I'm going to look at filling in the centre. I want it really, really dense and dark in this centre. But again, I'm looking at trying to get these lovely edges, nice open edges. And I'm going to just add a little bit more dark. I'll use pure black in there, right in that centre. Get it nice and dense. Just going to wipe the excess paint off my brush. And as we did earlier, I'm going to pull a shadow. Just taking a little bit of this paint and then pulling this shadow out. A little bit that way. And this just sits the tree down. So I'm mixing some titanium white and some cerulean blue. So I'm putting on the shadowed side of the snow. So remember again, we're adding some oil to this to thin this a little bit, because there's a lot of thick paint now and I want this thinner paint to stick to it. So I'm going to bash the bristles open, get those bristles nice and open. And then I'm starting, the light is coming from the left, so this side of the tree is going to be the lightest. This part will be in shadow. So again, I'm tapping, imagining these branches, and I'm tapping the snow, turning the brush over to use the other side, tapping on the snow, and I'm going to wipe and reload. It is important that you wipe the brush because you will be picking up a lot of the dark colour from underneath. Again, it's very, very important that you leave these darks showing and you don't try and cover it all. Again, just wiping that excess off and reloading. So I'm going to clean the brush now completely because I'm switching to white. Is that a wipe? Dry out your thinners. You don't want thinner to get into your painting at all. So I'm going to dip into some of the liquid white just because it's that little bit thinner, and I'm adding some titanium white into that. That's just instead of me adding oil to the white. The liquid white is already quite thin. So now, same thing as we did before, I'm going to push them bristles nice and open. And we're going to begin tapping on the left hand side. You can see how much brighter that is now compared to the blue shadow side. Very, very light pressure. If you press hard on this, it's just going to mix with the dark colour underneath and you're just going to end up with the mud really. Again, just wipe that off and reload. Save those darks. And you can see how much this has come right forward compared to the ones at the back, which is what you want. Again, reload. Because there's a lot of dark paint on here, I'm having to reload regularly. Now at the moment there's two perfectly separate areas and I don't really want that, so I'm going to dance just a little bit of this colour over so that it's not completely separated. And then I'm going to jump back to the blue again and do exactly the same, bring some of that blue shadow over to the other side. I've switched now to a flat brush. and I'm going to load up with this dark mix that we used for the main tree, and I'm going to begin doing these dead trees on the left hand side. So here's your bravery test. Now what I do is I usually mark off where I want these to end. I'm going to have one there and one just a little bit lower. And these come right off the canvas. So I'm using the brush on its side, on its chiselled edge, and I'm going to press quite firmly and bring that all the way down. Now you can see that's just missed the canvas a little bit. That's just telling me it needs a little drop of oil in the paint. So I'm going to do that again. I'm just going to add a very small amount of oil to the paint, and I'm going to hit that again. Just bring that all the way down. Just go back up a little bit. Get that down. Now I'm not worrying about the end because we'll sort that out in a moment. And then we'll do the second tree. Just added a little drop of the linseed oil to that mix so that it flows nice and easily. And I want this one to just have a little bit of a bend in it. It's not so straight. We'll have that one end about there. I'm just going to wipe the brush and redo that again as well. Okay, just give that brush a little wipe, clean it off. And like we did with the trees, we're just going to bring out a little bit of a shadow just by pulling from the bottom. And this is just going to sit them down. When we highlight these later on, we're going to have snow drifting up these, but for now this just adds the shadow in at the bottom. Again, be aware of where your light source is coming from. Take that right up to there. Nice clean brush. I'm just going to soften these edges. I don't want any hard edges. So now I'm switching back to the cerulean blue that we used for the shadows side. Back to my chiselled edge brush. And I'm going to begin adding some detail on these trees. This side again is in shadow, so I'm using the light blue. Very, very little work needed to make these look like trees. I'm using the brush on its chiselled edge, and it's just like a little stabbing motion. Little pull down. Again, keep wiping, reloading. When you're reloading, you are forming a chiselled edge on your brush, and it's that sharp chiselled edge that's going to give you the detail you need to be able to create these trees. Again, wipe that. I'm going to do the other side, or the other tree I should say. I'm just using that chiselled edge and then just flicking down, and already you can see there's, you know, you're creating the illusion of bark. Now I'm going to switch to the titanium white. I haven't bothered to clean the brush, I've just given it a wipe. And I'm going to do the outside edge. This is much brighter. Now it is mixing with the colour underneath, so you will have to probably do this a couple of times to get the value that you want. Do the other side. This is the light side. Hopefully you can see now, the thicker paint is creating this texture, which is giving this lovely illusion of bark. So again, I'm just reloading, and I just want to put a little bit of brightness on these front edges. So very, very little pressure. And you can see how these really stand out against that dark sky. And it's the thicker paint, you know, the fact that I've actually got very thick paint on there that is creating this illusion. Switching to a liner brush, or it's sometimes referred to as a rigger. I'm going to begin creating the tree limbs. Now, in order to use this brush, you do need to thin your paint down to an inky texture. So I'm adding quite a lot of the medium now. I want this to just roll off the brush. So you can see how much medium. And I've gone straight into that dark mix that I used from earlier. And I'm rolling this brush in now. And I'll get a nice point on that. Okay. So to use this brush, place it flat and then begin to wiggle. And as you come up onto the brush, you come right up onto its tip. And you'll create these lovely skinny little limbs. Now it's good if you've got an unsteady hand. You do want to wiggle your hand around, create these random shapes. And I absolutely love how these become very silhouette against the moon. So I'm going to play on that. A little bit of extra interest. So I'm focusing on this back tree first of all. And then have that one going behind that one. So again, try to not repeat your shapes, try to keep it nice and random. And I do think less is more. I won't go too crazy by adding too many of these limbs on. So I'm going to begin working on the other tree, and I want these now to begin to overlap this tree here. Again, overlapping is really nice compositional element to your painting. So we'll have one coming across here. So again, notice how I come right up onto the tip. And the fact that this paint is very, very inky is enabling it to just come right up. Have another one here. And this is your painting, so you can pretty much add these wherever you feel the need to. Okay. So we're going to add some snow now to this these limbs. So back to the cerulean blue, I want to add the shadow of the snow in first. A little bit of oil just to thin that slightly. And very carefully, I'm just going to tap some of this on there. Now you're probably not seeing this too great, but you do need that shadow in there. So this is just the shadow part of the snow. Again, I'm not going to go too crazy with this, I just want to put a little bit of suggestion where I think that snow might have fallen and built up. And again back to white, so I'll clean that brush out. And into the titanium white. Again, I'm just going to thin that a little bit with some of this liquid white. And we'll tap on a little bit of a highlight on top of the shadow. Where the two meet, where your highlight and your shadow meet, you don't want a hard line. So with a clean brush, just lightly tap, and that'll just melt one into the other. So there's no paint on this brush at all, it's nice and clean. It's just a bit of blending. But I'm tapping the blend as opposed to trying to smooth it out. So we're now at the bit I like best, which is all the embellishing. So we're going to begin highlighting the snow area, and I'm using just pure thick titanium white. So I'm looking at where the moonlight is strongest. I want to create some lighter areas in this snow. Again, I'm following the contour, but I'm allowing this paint, I'm using the brush quite flat actually. You can actually use an overhand grip. I want this paint thick. Begin to start highlighting some of this snow area where I think the light is catching it the most. And just keep wiping, because you will be picking up a lot of the colour from underneath. I'm going to reload. Now here I want to create the illusion of drifted snow up the tree. So I'm coming up the tree and then levelling off. Again, give it a wipe. I'm the same with this one. Just bring that up the tree and then begin to level it off. So we've created a little bit of a ridge there. Now I'm going to highlight in front of this tree. Basically now it's a case of standing back and seeing where you want the light to be really catching. So obviously our focal point is this tree and the centre path area. Again, I'm going to create another little bit of a little hill here that might be just catching some light, and then level that off. Now I'm in danger of overplaying with it, so don't overwork this because you will lose some of your lightness. I'm quite happy with that. So I'm switching now to the dark mix that we used earlier, which is the black and the alizarin and the blue. And we're going to create some little foreground grasses just to create a little bit of interest. So So I can see a little bit of a hill there, maybe as the snow's gone a little bit lower and some of these grasses are just popping through. So place your bristle brush, place your fan brush onto the canvas, and there's no painting, it's just a push up movement. And you'll get these lovely little grasses. So I'll put some there, maybe some over here. Something here. Again, this is entirely up to you where you position yours. It's just to add a little bit of foreground interest. Now I'll switch now to the liner brush, and again back to this thin inky mix. Whenever you use the liner brush you will keep it inky, and we'll create a few little longer grasses peeking out from that. So I'm using this right on the tip now, just flicking some one way and then some the other way, letting them overlap. And then just to settle these in, I'm switching back to the fan brush, which I'm going to clean because I want to go to a lighter colour. I just want to sit these in very much how we've done all the way through. A little bit of white, and I'm going to push a little bit of snow up to these and allow some of the shadow. And this just settles these in. That down. So all I'm doing is just taking the very bottoms and just blurring the edges out, and that just creates like a natural shadow. Finally, I'm going to add some little stars in this. Now, I haven't done this in the original, but we did this at Christmas time with some of my customers and we added some stars in, and I thought it was a really, really nice touch. So I'm going to do that again today. So back to the liner brush, and I'm going into the blue mix from before, which is basically white and cerulean. So to get these little stars to look like they're sparkling, we'll put the little blue dot on, and then you'll flick out. It is the flicking that makes all the difference. Flick, flick, flick. Now it doesn't matter that they're not all perfect. I'm going to do a couple of these and then I'll put the little bright sparkle in, so you can see them as a grouping. Place the dot on, flick, 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 and we'll do another one over here. Flick. It's the flicking because it makes the edges taper away, and that's what you're looking for. So now I'm just going to wipe the brush and go into some liquid white or titanium white. Just want it a little bit thinner so it comes straight off your brush. I'm right in the centre of these now. We're going to put a lovely bright sparkle. How cool is that? So as well as doing the sparkly stars like that, you can just put a few little dots in of varying sizes. Remember to space them out. Back to the blue mix. We'll have another little twinkler over in this far corner. Oh. Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed painting this with you today. I really do hope you've had a good time and that you've learnt something from this. This is your painting, so you put as many of these stars on as you want. And I'll see you again in the next video.